Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
All right, here we go from an undisclosed location, away from my office, but in another made-up office in Italy, where it's hot. So there you go. And before arriving here, I was in the UK for InfoSecurity Europe, and it was hot. And I'm not lying. Kevin, please tell us. Was it hot last week?
It was a very hot week last week. I was in London as well. We've just found out we were at the same conference centre, but at different conferences at the same time.
I know.
But no, it was 29, 30 degrees centigrade last week in London, and my hotel room did not have air conditioning, so I felt
no, really?
Yeah, it was warm in Shepherd's Bush for a few nights.
Yeah, actually at the Excel, they really had a crank in the AC, and when you walked outside, you could really kind of feel your skin burning a little bit. So it's like, this is the first time I'm getting a 10 in London, and I enjoyed it. I mean, I love that city. But we're not here to talk about London. We're here to talk about an important topic, which I try to talk about it a lot. I've talked about it with you many times. We've been on panels together, and it's about getting technology right. And the occasion is that you actually started a show with us, and that's exciting. So not just the guest, but you take the burden of actually inviting people, planning, and not just showing up for that, but you also get the benefit of driving the conversation and I think having fun. But we'll get into the why. Let's start with you, who is Kevin Macnish, for those that haven't heard from you, and what did you start it on ITSP Magazine?
Sure. So thanks, Marco. Yeah, so Kevin Macnish, I currently work as a consulting senior manager at a company called Soprasteria. It's mostly an IT company, but about 2.5 years ago, the company set up a digital ethics consultancy. And so I joined it shortly into that lifespan, and I've been working with them for just over 2 years now, working with clients, helping them to see how to use technology well, putting guardrails in place to stop mistakes from happening, and seeing where we can help them to benefit most. On one level, it's kind of like sort of doing a risk analysis of where things can go wrong with technology, but also trying to be more positive and saying, where can things go right, and how can we make your technology do even better things for you, while making sure that it's not discriminating or violating people's privacy, that it's sufficiently transparent, and so on. But prior to joining Soprasteria 2 years ago, I was an academic working at the universities of Leeds and then the University of Twente, where I was an assistant professor working in ethics and technology in both of those areas as well. So that's my sort of academic background with a bit of publishing. I've got a few articles, a few books out, and so on, and then moved over to the industrial world 2 years ago. And I think, as you say, why the podcast and why now? It was a way of keeping in touch with a lot of friends from academia, and a way of connecting with other people doing the same thing right now. The world of digital ethics consulting is quite small. There are a sort of handful of us, maybe 10, 15 of us around the world, I think. And so we all kind of know each other to a greater or lesser degree, in its way of keeping in touch there, but also bringing in what's happening in the academic world, what's happening in philosophy and sociology and computer science, to understand what the ethical issues are, how they're being handled and challenged at the forefront of academic research, and how that can then translate over into what we're doing in industry and what the difference is there.
Yeah. No, I was excited that you was getting this started, because I think you're going to do that more academic conversation, of course. We're covering about the same thing. I mean, I stay a little bit more general in terms of redefining society, but that's, what we're doing here. And I want to start this by asking you, I mean, you mentioned there is only a few people that do this, and I'm thinking like I have never heard talking so much about ethics.
Yeah.
and even bringing philosophy back. I mean, my background is sociology and political science, and I feel like, well, maybe I am in the right place nowadays, because it comes down, it's not more the technology anymore that is going to have the easy button to fix technology, but it's a way to look in our own humanity. So I'm getting already philosophical here, but is that something you're feeling the pulse as well as you talk to people?
Very definitely. I think it's interesting you should say that, because I think looking at the job market right now, if you look at the jobs that are advertised for in-house digital ethics experts, they're still looking very much for technical expertise. And that seems to be a feeling from people who are not in this world, that the solution lies with technology, and the technology has got us into this problem of bias. And therefore technology should be able to resolve it. And certainly people are selling, you know, bias scanners, PII, personal information scanners and things like that, which can do some of the work, but they'll never do everything, because it's not context sensitive. And it's just never going to be, it's never going to solve the solution. So people have to be involved. And I think in 2 to 3 years' time, we'll start to see this. And one of the big things which we see and push on is the importance of a corporate culture that needs to go along with that. You can't simply just put policies and so on in place saying, well, you've got to be non-discriminating in your data sets or your algorithms. That's just not going to cut it. People have to understand what that means and what that looks like and where you go and so on. And as you were saying, Marco, there's been a huge amount of discussion, particularly since last November, with ChatGPT coming out.
I was going to say that let's say the big bang was
exactly. It's suddenly, I think obviously I was aware of GPT-3 and the forthcoming GPT-4 as it was forthcoming at the time, but ChatGPT opened up everybody's eyes to what large language models can do and what they look like. And they are, I was about to say quietly revolutionizing. It's not quiet at all. It's revolutionizing the marketplace. It's revolutionizing the workplace and universities, and not always in a good way. Some of the things we're seeing is people coming back down and just putting a blanket ban on using ChatGPT across their organization. And of course, everyone just ignores that and uses it on their phone anyway. And so and again, this is why culture is important, because at the senior levels of a company, they think, we've got this sorted. We don't need to worry about proprietary information finding its way into ChatGPT. But at the lower levels, that's exactly what's happening. And then you've got the ethical questions around, potential for bias within large language models, the lack of robustness of veracity, so they're not always truthful in what they say. There's a huge amount of interest kicking off around them now, not to mention the legality, and that came up recently in one of the conversations I was having with a guest around the fact that, if these systems, which I believe they have scraped data from the internet to get personal data, then that's technically illegal according to the General Data Protection Regulation. And so what is going to happen there, I have no idea, but it remains to be seen as to where these things go. But huge questions about what's happening in society because of developments in machine learning and LLMs and so on. So fascinating time to be involved in all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't know, 1 every 3 podcasts I have, it's about either ChatGPT or generative AI or DALL-E,
well, that's the
copywriting music. And all. Well, it's not boring because I feel like, again, we're looking. It's kind of like when you ask to an astronaut, what do you learn when you go in space, and you say, we learn about ourselves, about our planet, by looking at it from outside. And I feel sometimes the same. I have like this sometimes very lively chat with ChatGPT, and I try to have a conversation. I'm kind of using it myself to write more, but it's kind of like this collaborative thing. It's not just like write ABC. But I feel like I'm kind of seeing the universe, the humanity in there, in this case, because it's like you said, whatever harvest has been done, it's the good and the bad of humanity. Is the book, is the article, is the fake information, the manipulation. Exactly, so it's kind of like, this is what we look like. So I'm sure you'll talk about this. And what else are you going to focus on the show?
So again, with one of my, given the background I've got, one of the things which really drives me is understanding how to operationalize or embed ethics into the workplace. So as an academic philosopher, a lot of the work I was doing was around researching what are the principles, what are the ideas that are important. And I think we kind of got there by about, particularly with AI, certainly in its current stand, we got there about 2018, 2019 of a pretty good understanding of what are the ethical issues. The thing which has been motivating both academia and industry for the intervening 5 years has been, well, that's fine. How do we actually make that real? How do we say that technology should not discriminate? That's great. How do we stop it from discriminating? How do we ensure that, well, you've got things like Latanya Sweeney, the researcher at, I think she's at MIT or Harvard, doing some, or Columbia, one of those, doing some research on her name, which is a classic sort of African-American name, and finding out that the pictures that came up when you looked at Latanya were all of Black teenagers who were being arrested. And yet when you search up a name like John or Julian, you get white men who are all successful at university or whatever. And so those sort of biases which are just built into systems, and obviously that was about 10 years ago now, but they're still there. They're just more subtle and harder to spot. And so questions like that, I think, really motivate me. How do we deal with that? How do we make this stuff real in order to really protect people going forward, so that the technology that we have genuinely benefits people in the way that we want it to, without some of those side effects coming along and taking us out at the knees?
Yeah. So who are you going to talk about this? I mean, you're going to try to talk to people that, I'm assuming most people in academia, they will agree with you or me, and looking at this thing and say, well, I mean, if you don't see this, we got a problem. You need glasses, but right? Are you planning to maybe do some more open conversation when maybe somebody may have a different opinion on it, or panels maybe? I mean, we've done panels together. I love doing
exactly. Yeah, we did those panels last year, and they were great. I think the frustrating thing I found with the panels was that there wasn't enough time to really get into some of those issues, even in 45 minutes with 3 or 4 people. So that was why the move to doing these sort of one-on-one sessions was to get into a bit more depth. But there's broad agreement insofar as, obviously, nobody's going to say we want technology to be discriminating on grounds of race or gender or whatever, but how we get it there is an interesting question, and one which people differ on. And then I think there are some more philosophical questions which we might come to with time. So I had Sven Nyholm on recently, who's a professor at Munich, who's just written a book. This is Technology Ethics, which is a great introduction to the subject. And he was, we were talking about the gap between sort of robot or tech ethics and human ethics, and what happens when an AI starts to come out with its own morality, and that morality is different from human morality. How do we then square that circle? What do we do with that? And so all sorts of interesting questions. How should we treat AIs? Questions around, do they have personality? Should they be given rights and things like that, which I'm quite anti, but with time we'll hopefully get people on who are more, more interested in a discussion there about that. So there are lots of, what I'm hesitant to do at the moment is make it too philosophical and too academic, though. I do want to bring some of those insights in, but still keep them very accessible to the non-academic audience. Right. So we're trying to make sure that this is open for anybody, and not just a handful of academics who know the right language.
Right. I mean, the hope is that people that want to learn about it, not necessarily have the book base is the pillar of the
Yeah.
academic had, they can actually get the point. And I think what is important in it, and I'm going to ask you, why you decided to do podcasts, because I know you're really busy, and as we mentioned, it takes time. But I think, at least for me, if I can make people think, I'm doing something right. And so I don't expect the audience to be educated. I'm expecting more my guests more than me to educate the audience. So is that the audience you have in mind, like the regular person that, though it's thinking about this problem, right?
Yeah, very definitely. Because if we were going for an audience of philosophers, say, then yes, the language would be different and what we were trying to achieve would be very different. But no, this is for people who have got no idea, who might have read a couple of newspaper articles and said, oh, that's really interesting. I've not really thought about ethical issues before, or I've thought about ethical issues, but I don't know where to go with them. And those kind of issues those kind of people are who we're sort of really targeting on. But as you say, the educational aspect of it is good, both, hopefully for the audience, but on a very selfish level for me as well, because I'm getting to engage with all of these people, a lot of whom are friends, but it's getting me to read some of their more recent work, and that's very helpful, just to keep my own mind active and questioning and thinking and so on, and finding out what's going on in the world, not just from the industry perspective, but also from that academic side. So really, it's trying to cross that divide at the moment and see where we can learn from each other.
Yeah, I like that, because if you're reading paper, they're check, recheck, edited. When you're talking to someone, it can come out something that you didn't think you were going to go there. I mean, you're almost brainstorming as you have this conversation. I mean, look at us. There's no script whatsoever, and we're just having a conversation. I just need to remember sometimes they're like, we are promoting the new show. Otherwise, I'm going to start asking you other kind of questions. So we're going to stay there for the next, 5 minutes. Maybe they will keep going. I know your first episode is out. I know they're already in the queue, which, we will publish very, very soon. And maybe a second one will be already out by the time we publish this. The first conversation, I know you had it with
Ravit Dotan,
Ravit, which I had the pleasure to have on the show, and we met through you on a panel. So again, world.
Exactly.
What was that about? So that people can tease them, so that when they finish this, they can jump.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of what we covered was exactly what we've just been talking about, this idea about embedding ethics. And she came out with a very interesting point that in recent years has been talking a lot about operationalizing ethics, which feels very professional. And yet the challenge was, when you operationalize something, that's often just means getting it embedded in the code. And yet when we're trying to get it embedded in an organization so that everybody thinks that way, so it's not a matter of just, here's an extra step in the development process where we start off with, here are some ethical requirements, and then slowly we sort of build them in. It's getting people to think about ethics so they're aware of it and looking out for those problems. And so that was really interesting, was sort of pushing out into that cultural area. And also Ravit sees herself much more as an activist than I do, as well as an academic and a consultant. And so it was interesting to sort of chat about some of those kind of areas as well that she gets into. So fascinating conversation and a lot of fun as ever. So she's good value.
Oh yeah, she's very passionate too. So definitely fun. And I want to tease. I know you mentioned one next guest. Do you have some other few that you want to kind of tease about?
So we got loads that we've been talking to now. So Philippe Prey, who's an academic at Twente, Olivia Gambelin, who has her own consultancy in Silicon Valley, dealing with a lot of startups. Sven Nihom I've just mentioned, Gemma Gladden-Clavel in Spain, who has, she's an academic who also set up her own consultancy, Etikas. And Etikas are fascinating. They do algorithmic audits for companies, which they call sort of second party companies that come to them and say, we want you to audit our algorithm and tell us whether it's where it needs to be improved from an ethical perspective. But they also do third party algorithmic audits where the person doesn't come to them, but they do an audit, they reverse engineer the algorithm to the best of their ability, and then say, okay, what is, what are the big apps around taxi ride sharing in Europe at the moment, and what do their algorithms look like? What are some of the justice algorithms being used in Spain? And can we reverse engineer those and then work out what some of the ethical problems might be? And so again, there's an activist sort of civil society element to that, which is not an area I've engaged in that much, but it really, really interesting. And interesting how some of those areas are driving forward parts of the debate. So yeah, so good to see that. Lots of stuff coming up, and more interviews to be had.
And I'm assuming they have an algorithm to do that, right?
Yeah, it's very much in my head at the moment. That was a large paper if I was clever enough, though.
We'll use an algorithm to analyze and audit the algorithm.
Oh, yes.
And audit our own algorithm, because who knows?
You get an inception of algorithms, don't you?
Who knows what is in there? No, I mean, it's for me, again, I am happy, very happy when you told us I made my decision. I'm going to start the show because I know the value of this conversation is going to be incredible. I'm already listening, so I'm a big fan.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yes, well, it's great to be on the TSP network as well, because it's coming into something which has already got momentum and got footprint, which is great. And obviously, as you said, I mean, we've been talking on these podcasts for years now. So
yeah, I feel like we've been known for quite a while. Yeah. Fantastic. So unless you want to add something or have a call to action for people to join and listen, I would just go ahead and wrap. But I'll give you the mic.
Oh, thanks. No, I didn't. I should have had something prepared, shouldn't I? This shows up.
No, there's nothing prepared. I'll cut. If it's prepared, if you read it, I'll cut it. I swear.
If you're at all interested in technology, then you should be listening to this stuff, because technology is not relevant unless it touches on people. And as soon as it touches on people, there are ethical considerations. And so if you're at all interested in technology, and that's in the broadest sense, so we've got stuff on cybersecurity, AI, robotics, all the exciting stuff going on right now. Do come and listen. And of course, don't stop listening to Marco's stuff as well. That's very much complementary what we're doing, and great to have this stuff going on together.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want to do, and we're doing. It's this networking within the network where we call each other, we co-host something, we go as a guest. Even Sean and I started to do that lately, and it's a lot of fun. And again, I'm looking forward to all of this. An invitation to everybody to visit the channel page. There is all the social media there to connect with you. There is a way to subscribe on their favorite podcast player. That can be Apple, Spotify, whatever it is, any app, and just tell everybody. I mean, I think honestly, just to close, sometimes I cringe when I see on TV some people just slamming and say we shouldn't use ChatGPT. Yeah. And I was like, why? Let people use it and judge themselves. Yes. I mean, I find a lot of good use for that. I know there's a lot of good use in medical research and academia in a lot of places. So give it a chance and let's listen to this conversation where somebody
it's about using it intelligently, isn't it? It's about thinking and not just diving straight into it, but understanding what it is, understanding what the risks are, and going in with your eyes open. Just as you don't get behind the wheel of a car and drive it without having done lessons and passed a test and everything else. If there's potential for harm, you need to take responsibility. But that doesn't mean that you then don't use it. So absolutely.
Exactly. That's it. that train left the station, so you need to catch up, and it's not coming back. So that's the story. Absolutely. Kevin, thank you so much for this time and for all you're doing, for all the guests you'll bring on. And again, everybody stay tuned. This is ITSP Magazine, and there is a lot of other new show just started there. So check it out and stay tuned, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.
You too. Thanks, Marco.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you learned something new and this story made you think, then share ITSP Magazine with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our columns. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.